Okay, it's about a week into October. It's time we dial the spooky factor up a little bit, okay? This'll be a Geography is Everything on Thriller Bark, also known as the Straw Hat Pirates on Zombie Island! Whoa! Whoa! Zombies! That one's a tree! A tree zombie! Whoa! Are you scared yet? Zombies! Whoa! Zombies! Whoa! Okay, I have to apologize for that one. I know plenty of you are about ready to faint from that horrific display I put on. Oh, please, Tekking, I know this is the most spooktacularist month of the year, but you gotta dial down the horror, man, if we're gonna have any hope of getting through this. And I'm like, I understand that might have been going a little bit too far, okay? So, today's video is gonna be on Thriller Bark, which is, of course, one of the main islands the Straw Hats stopped at on their Grand Line journey. It's actually one of the very few islands that I have left on this show, because Thriller Bark and I think Dressrosa, there's a few other islands in the east that I, may or may not discuss, I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm running out of, like, mainstream islands the Straw Hats have visited, right? But anyway, yeah, it's actually a little bit dubious, whether or not Thriller Bark is in fact geography, because it's not just an island, it is an island, but it's also a boat. Now, there's two camps to this. There's a camp of people that are, like, adamant, like, no, it's not a freaking boat, it's clearly an island, it was an island first. But, as a counterpoint to that, the next group rises up and they're like, no, it was turned into a boat, therefore its island status is null and void. And there have been so many internet wars over this, it's just been insane. But you know what? I will remind everybody, very clearly and true as the guiding light in this argument, geography is everything. Is Thriller Bark included in everything? Let me just check the roster of everything that I have off camera here. Okay, there's like Ice-T is included in everything. Let's see, insects like the giant weta are everything, yes, and Thriller Bark is included in everything. Okay, gotcha. So yes, it is in fact geography, it counts. So, yes, it started off as an island in the West Blue, which means unlike every other island in the Grand Line, it is not magnetically charged, so the Straw Hats had to get through other means, we'll get to that. Gecko Moria and Dr. Hogback, I guess, changed the island, modified it, I don't know how they did it, I guess they have shipwright skills, they kinda need to. It's sort of the thing with Frankie, like Frankie rebuilt himself with scrap metal, that kind of just lends it to the belief like he can't just be a shipwright. Frankie also has to be a master surgeon and doctor in order to build himself up. It's just like Hogback and Moria can't just be really good at creating zombies, they also have to have pretty good shipwright talents in order to build a ship like that, right? Or maybe they resurrected the zombies and they made them do it, I don't know. But anyway, somehow they converted this island in the West Blue into a bark, which is a type of very large pirate ship with 3 masts, because Frankie's the one that actually explains what a bark is. So, and they named it Thriller Bark after, of course, the king of pop, Michael Jackson's Thriller, got to thrill. Okay, I'm just gonna stop. Okay, so anyway, they convert this island into a pirate ship, and then they somehow take it over Reverse Mountain into paradise, and then sail it into the Devil's Triangle, the Devil's Sea, the Florian Triangle. There's a lot of triangles and devils in that sentence, but whatever. They pilot into this like foggy, mysterious sea where ships have been missing for centuries. Long before Thriller Bark anchored there were mysteries abound in this ocean, right? Well, anyway, they decide that would be a good place to just anchor it, so they do that for about 10 years, and up until the current storyline, when the Straw Hats arrived there, so it'd be 12 years now. But, yeah, and then they started their operation. What was their operation? Well, you see, I feel like Moria at the beginning of his pirate adventure really did genuinely want to become the king of the pirates, and he actively tried to make that happen. He built up his own crew, he went through the first half of the Grand Line, he went into the New World, he was doing it, and then he hit Kaido. He hit the brick wall that was Kaido, and just got the ever-loving crap beat out of him. His entire crew was wiped out. And so I think what happened with Moria is like, okay, I can't go through the stress of losing my crew again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up a crew of zombies that are already dead. So that way, if they die, it's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to build up this huge army of zombies all under my control. And then I'm going to tackle the new world again. But I think over the years, Moria just became like very slothful and just complacent in where he was at. Like the plan was like, all right, this is going to take some time to gather up enough shadows, to gather up enough corpses in order to make this zombie army. So let's just anchor the island or the ship in the Florian Triangle, and then after a few years, after we have enough, zombies for this army, then we can try the new world again. But I think at some point Moria was just like, you know what? I don't need to become, the king of the pirates. I mean, I guess I can, but you guys do it for me. You make me king of the pirates. That was kind of his slogan, sort of like his catchphrase. He's like, Kishi, hurry up and make me king of the pirates. I'm just gonna sit here and sleep a little bit. I didn't get much sleep last night. You've been sleeping for 14 hours. Yeah, no, I didn't get enough. You need at least 22 hours of sleep a day. So, yeah, I think he just got to the point where he's like, you know what? I have this huge island ship under my domain. I've gathered up so many rare corpses and shadows over the years that I've been here. I'm already kind of like a big fish in a small pond sort of deal. As long as I stay in my little ship island in the Florian Triangle in paradise, nobody can really stop me. And I'm a warlord as well, so I can do pretty much whatever. I think even if he did have an army ready to go, and Hogback and Absalom and Perona all approached him, and he's like, okay, sir, I think we have everything we need. Now we're ready to go into the new world and try again. Take out Kaido this time. Moria would just been like, yeah, I'm not really a fan of the weather today. I just don't think that's a great time to do it. It's just like, you don't want to do it anymore, do you? Like, not really. So yeah, at that point when the Straw Hats arrived and everything, that was kind of the situation there. So, the layout of Thriller Bark is like so. It's got a giant mouth gate. Okay. It's got very prominent lips, Thriller Bark. I will say that much, okay? So as you can see here, the island itself is kind of in the center of this, like, artificial lake that is created. The ship itself, I imagine, it stretches kind of down under the water, and water can kind of filter in to create this artificial lake surrounding the island proper. And then you have the masts that connect like the outer ring of the ship to the inner island of the ship. The main mast is coming out of the island there, and then you have the other mast off to the other side, and then you got the giant sails and everything. Like I said, it's an engineering marvel, if nothing else, okay? So the idea is that a ship will wander into the Florian Triangle, Thriller Bark will open up its giant lips gates, and then, the water will rush in quickly, and so trapping the ship, and then the gates will shut. Now, keep in mind, the Florian Triangle, very, very foggy, and all of the stuff I just mentioned, the giant, like, ring and the gates and the lips and everything, those are really big. So it's entirely feasible that with the fog and everything, you might not even realize that your ship is being captured until it's too late. All you might hear are just, like, the sounds of the chains, raising the gates in the distance, like what's going on? And then your ship just rushes in, and then it just stops all of a sudden, and then you just hear this big boom in the distance as the gate shuts. And, from looking around, everything is still very foggy and you're still in the water, so you would assume, you haven't been captured, but yes, you have, okay? So at this point, the only thing that you really can do is go to the main island, which is, of course, what Moria and Hogback and Absalom and Perona all planned on, all right? So, you get to the island, and immediately as soon as you get to the island, there's a trench kind of dug in around the island. So if this is sea level right here, there's sort of this trench that goes down, and this kind of trench circles the entire island, okay? And then you have to go up down this trench to get into the island proper. I would imagine this trench serves a few functions. One is probably just a spillway, so when the water kind of, because the whole thing is kind of rocking in the water, it's still a ship, so the water might kind of spill onto the island to make sure the island doesn't get flooded. It serves as a spillway, so the water goes into this trench and then just gets, vented back into the ocean, right? So that's one purpose of it. Another purpose of it is to trap the pirates that attempt to land there, just like, all right, we're going going on this island, and they try to land on the shore, and they just instead fall down into this pit, and they can't get out, right? There's a lot of bones and things down there. Yo ho ho ho. And also Cerberus, the guardian of hell, just hanging out down there. I'm just kidding. It's not really Cerberus. It's just a poor, hapless doggo that happened to be stitched to two other poor, hapless doggos. So yes, Hogback! He's a mad scientist! You know what? I love Thriller Bark because this is Oda. You know, he's inspired a lot of islands off of, like, real-life locations and everything, but also a lot on movies and shows and music and stuff. And, you know, Oda probably figured early on in One Piece, like, at some point, I'm gonna have to make an entire island based on all the spooky stuff, the horror genre, right? And so he did it, and he blended it all together beautifully. You got zombies, you got a creepy mad scientist laboratory, you got ghosts, oh, you got dancing zombies in a courtyard, which is a direct reference to Michael Jackson's Thriller. You got the creepy mansion, you got the creepy castle, you got the creepy graveyard, you got the creepy forest. You know, like, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's called the Dead Forest or something in actual context of the story, but everything should just have creepy in front of it, right? So yeah, it's a great way of doing that. There's a perpetual fog constantly around, so daylight, even when it does come, doesn't usually come. You know, it's a very creepy atmosphere in general. Yeah, you got the mad scientist, you got the zombie master, you got a creepy, just, you know, mad scientist experiment, which is an Absalom. You know, he's got, like, the lion face, and then you got Perona that summons ghosts. So yeah, all this thrown together, it's a beautiful just love letter to everything horror, right? You know, the gothic aesthetic of, like, a lot of the Hammer horror films, like when they're walking around the mansion and everything like that. You get cues from maybe Dracula, then you go into Hogback's, you know, laboratory, and you get cues from Dr. Frankenstein. You know, I just love stuff like that. Mummies, we didn't really, well, okay, kind of. Ryuma was sort of a mummy. Ryuma's body was kind of like all shriveled up like a mummy. He wasn't, like, wrapped up in bandages like a mummy, but I think there were a few of the zombies that kind of had that aesthetic. Oh, and skeletons! Skeletons! I'm thinking, like, what other reference is from Thriller Bark? Oh yeah, freaking skeletons, which is funny because Brook isn't even connected to Thriller Bark. I mean, he is, you know, he has to go there to get his shadow back and everything, but it's not like he was created on Thriller Bark or something. He's just something completely separate that just happened to be in the same neighborhood as the creepy island, right? Okay. So, once you get into the island proper, though, as I said, there's a creepy forest which you can walk through. Zombies are everywhere, and sometimes the zombies will just kind of, like, stand and stare at you from a distance. I imagine every zombie has a job to fulfill, and I'm not just talking about, like, the categories of zombies. Like, there are wild zombies, there are surprise zombies, that's kind of, you know, like, obvious what they do. They stay hidden and they jump out at you. There's general zombies that Absalom rules over. They're the strongest zombies on the entire island. There's special zombies, which is what Oars was. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about, like, whenever a zombie is born and given a category, be like, all right, zombie number 751, you are going to be a wild zombie in the creepy forest. Zombie's like, understand, me zombie, creepy forest, gotcha. Yes, now here is your job, and he gives him, like, a little, rips off a little piece of paper, like, okay, here's what you do now, here's your script, all right, here's, like, your character from, like, D&D or whatever. She's like, okay, let's see here. I stay behind tree and walk out of shadows to scare passerby. Then I creep behind tree before they have a chance to see me properly, so they think that they saw something, but they really didn't. Then later on, I jump out of ground, and I grab them legs, and I tear them down. Okay, I got this. I can understand what this means now. So it's like every zombie has, like, a little script to fulfill, right? There was even a moment when, like, you know, Luffy and everybody were kind of walking through the forest, and they see that, like, unicorn zombie and the tree zombie, which, I want you to imagine that for a second. Hogback, probably in a moment of drunken, you know, stupor, was just like, a sentry, grab me that tree from the forest. I'm gonna graft this random zombie face to it. It'll be great. Glug, glug, glug. And so he just takes the zombie parts and grafts it to a tree. And so, you know, Luffy passes by and he, you know, sees, like, a little tea party between the unicorn and the tree. And they kind of look at them and they're kind of surprised. They're like, oh, crap. We've got our script. Oh, spooky. You know, so that was kind of funny. And then there's other times, you know, where the zombies are just kind of like, they're not actively trying to attack everybody because they know they're trapped. You know, they've done this so many times with like random ships just landing at Thriller Bark, and it's like it's kind of like part of like the presentation. You know, it's like, you know, as soon as they land on the island, you know, all the zombies could just like gwomp them immediately. Like they could just step on Thriller Bark, and then every single wild and surprise zombie could just like and then take them in. But there's no fun in that. Zombies still need to be entertained, right? You know, they spend all day just in this creepy forest and waiting underground in their coffins, you know, and you know how much of a pain that is? They gotta come out of the grave, and then they gotta scare people, and then they gotta send them to Hogback's mansion. Then, who do you think's gonna fill in that grave for the next people that are gonna come down, alright? Every zombie is equipped with a shovel, and they have to like, you know, like, okay, I'm gonna hide myself back in, I gotta make sure the dirt is level and everything. Each zombie kind of helps each other zombies out, like, okay, you good, Bert? You good? Alright, awesome, okay, I'm gonna try to dig myself now. You know, so that's how that works, right? So, anyway, yeah, it's like prestige and stuff. So it's like, all right, the zombies won't attack you right away. You kind of look into the forest, and you might see them just kind of screwing off and doing weird stuff and everything. Like, one random zombie might be like, you know, doing pull-ups on a tree or something, and he just looks at you like, and it's like, okay, and then you just kind of like, it's like if you go to like a haunted hayride or whatever, you just like, there's like random attractions there, okay? So anyway, things really get intense when you get to midnight. That's when like the midnight hunt begins. That's what I kind of imagine is like, okay, the foreplay is over now, and now it's time to be starting to run for your life. It's terror time again, all right? That's when the zombies all come out. They kick off the night with the Thriller dance, like, everybody zombie night, round and round until you die. Everybody zombie night, it's fiesta time. You know, so they gotta do that. I mean, come on now. Alright, seriously, if you came back as a zombie, you'd be dancing too. I mean, come on now, right? You gotta make something out of it. So after that, though, after the traditional start of the night with the zombie dance, then they start chasing people through the island proper, okay? Their goal is to capture as many strong pirates they can, you know, trap them in a web. You know, Talaran is the spider monkey zombie dude, and he can trap you in a web. He sends them off to Absalom, or one of the members of the Mysterious Four, and then Moria eventually captures them, rips out their shadow, throws them into a new marionette, and then boom, 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 a new zombie is born, okay? So, yeah, Hogback's mansion, it's, like I said, creepy gothic mansion. It's got a creepy dining room. It's got a creepy sitting room. It's got a creepy bath where some stuff went down in that bath. But it's also got the creepy mad scientist laboratory, okay? And it's like ripped right out of Dr. Frankenstein. I mean, there's random machines that are buzzing and whirling and lighting up for no reason. You know, there's IV bags everywhere. There's blood. You know, there's a zombie on the table, like, give it life! You know, so that's pretty neat. You also got Hogback's bedroom, which is a creepy bedroom because it's filled with images of Victoria Sindri, who is Hogback's assistant, who he had a crush on, but she was married, but then she died in an accident, and then Hogback just decided, well, you know, I give it life! And a shadow. But mostly life! And then it comes back, and then, you know, it's like, Sindri, you are now my personal assistant. I hate plates. Okay, I choose to ignore that. That's fine. Fulsa, fulsa, fulsa. So, yeah, that pretty messed up there. So, yeah. Then behind Hogback's mansion, you have the mast mansion, which, you know, doubly it serves as the mast of the ship, but also serves as the living quarters of Gecko Moria. And I imagine Moria, for as slothful as he is, probably doesn't, you know, play in the theatrics very often. You know, like, people come to the island all the time, or they get trapped in the island, they run around the forest a little bit, oh no, spooky zombies, and then, you know, they get their shadows ripped out. You know, he'll wake up for that because he has to be the one to do that, but after he's the one that rips out the shadows, he's probably just like, alright, Hogback, here are the shadows, put them in whatever, I'm going back to bed, right? He probably doesn't appear very often. He's like the final boss kind of deal. He's just like, you get trapped and everything, like, welcome to Thriller Bark, Kishi, I am one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Gecko Moria, I will rip out your shadow! Snip, and then when people get their shadows removed, they immediately lose consciousness, so he, like, rips off their shadow, and they just, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's enough theatrics for one day, I'm going back to bed, you know? Right. So that's the manor there. That's also the place where the giant freezer was, where they keep special zombies, or zombies that are waiting to be reanimated, because you keep zombies out in the heat. They tend to stink something fierce. So he's like, all right, we have this giant freezer. That's where Ors is kept. They found Ors's body, also connected to Wano in some way, because they went to Wano to locate Ryuma's corpse and get Shusui, and plus Ors might have connections to Wano, or at least his race has connections to Wano. Like, they're probably the ones that pulled these islands together into one thing to create the Wano country. So it would make sense maybe they found Ors's corpse on like Onigashima or something, and then they dragged that back. Okay, so I'm still confused of how they got the island into paradise. But actually, better questions. So after the events of the Thriller Bark arc, the island is pretty much destroyed. This isn't like an island where people live. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It's not like there's regular towns on Thriller Bark or anything. Oh, that's the one thing Oda missed out on. There should have been a creepy town, right? Because, like in Dracula or whatever, you roll up to a creepy village, and there's the castle looming on the hill in the distance, and it's just like the townsfolk are all really creepy, and it's just like, oh, traveler, get away from this place, but first come to me pub and get some ale, but then leave this place. How much money do you have? So anyway, that could have been something added additional, like the creepy village. Maybe you could have made it work or something some way. But yeah, so there's no permanent settlements there. So Oda was just like, all right, I'm just gonna wreck this island by the end of the arc, right? So you had the general zombies, of course, but then you had Ors stomping around, and he's huge. And then you had the fight between Ors and the Straw Hats, and they beat him down. And then Moria absorbs all these shadows and does his Shadow Asgard shtick, and then he gets beaten down, and then Kuma shows up and uses Ursus' shock, which is like an explosion in the middle of it. The battle between Zoro and Ryuma, too, sliced up Hogback's mansion. The mast falls down. The whole thing is just wrecked by the end of it, right? Moria and everybody are defeated. Hogback takes Moria and Absalom, and they leave the island at the end of the arc. Perona got sent off to the Kuraigana Island, by Kuma, so she's not around anymore. The members of the Thriller Bark Victims Association, like the Rolling Pirates and everybody, they get out of the island. Frankie repairs Brooke's ship so they can get out of there. And then the Straw Hats, of course, leave. So by the end of Thriller Bark, nobody is left on the island. Everything's gone. There's just like the corpses of zombies just strewn everywhere, right? Unmoved, because all the shadows have returned to their rightful owners, right? So then I guess nothing really happens until 2 years later. Perona returns to the island to find Kumashi, and then she leaves, and so I guess it's abandoned again. But here's the thing. When Moria arrived at the Beehive Island to see Blackbeard, or see what happened with Absalom, who was doing like reconnaissance there, you see a ship that looks remarkably like Thriller Bark. I don't think it's the same exact ship, though. I think they just built like a miniature version of it that looks similar, but it isn't the same vessel. All right, because you'd think like, Perona returned to Thriller Bark, after the time skip to retrieve Kumashi. It would be really weird if it's like she returned to pick up Kumashi, and then as soon as she left, like a week later, Moria arrived, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna bring this ship back up to working order again. Like, even if you imagine, like, Absalom and, Hogback is helping him and everything, yeah, I think that's just too much of a thing, because Thriller Bark is such a big ship to really, sail. They didn't really even sail it. That's the thing. They kept it anchored in one spot for a very, very long time. Right, so there's no purpose, there's no reason to sail it anywhere. So yeah, I think the ship we see at the Beehive Island that Moria took there, I believe that was just like another variant of Thriller Bark. It just looks similar, but it's a lot smaller and easier to, like, sail, right? I still believe the ruins of Thriller Bark are in the Florian Triangle, just kind of floating around there, eventually going to be probably swept up by the sea, or crushed by those giant Cthulhuid, old ones that are wandering around the Florian Triangle. We still don't know what those things are. Some people have said, oh, maybe they're related to the numbers in Kaido's crew. Listen, the numbers are pretty big, but these things, whatever the hell they are, these things are not just big. These things are ginormous. These things are huge. All right? Especially when you consider, like, they're this big at scale with Thriller Bark, and we were talking about how big Thriller Bark is. To scale, this is how big they are, but this might not even their full bodies. The rest of their bodies might be like under the water. They might be walking on the ocean floor, how big these things are. These things, you want to know something really scary I thought of the other day? This thing right here, there's two possibilities. Number one, these things might just be the tops of these creatures. They might just be like the eye stalks of these creatures. Or how about this? what if these aren't even different creatures? What if all of these things in the distance are part of the same creature? There's a giant, like literally Cthulhuoid being wandering under the ocean of the Florian Triangle, and it has these huge like protrusions off of its body that serve as like its eye stalks so it can see around, and that's what those eye stalks are. You know, all of those things that we're seeing right here, they're connected to the same being under the ocean, which is even more huge. You know, so yeah, that's just some possibilities I threw out there. But yeah, I don't think they're the numbers, and I don't think they're related to ores at all, because like, you know, they just don't look, well, first off, they don't look like the ancient giants. They don't have the horns or anything. They just have like a very, very phallic appearance, if we're kind of being honest here, right? But yeah, very, very weird kind of creatures that exist in the Florian Triangle, right? But anyway, yeah. So that's pretty much Thriller Bark. I mean, there's a few other locales. There's like Perona's Wonder Garden, which is like, it's in between the manor and the Mast Mansion. It's just this little area. It's like an outdoor garden where Perona has all of her wild zombies and everything hanging out there, like Kumashi and Hippo Gentleman and everything, you know. The little squirrel, remember the little squirrel zombies that were running around? There is a treasure vault that Nami raided, so that's taken care of there. There's a kitchen. There's a kitchen, because, you know, you need, you know, Hogback wakes up in the middle of the night. He needs to make himself a sandwich. And zombies, of course, their main weakness is salt, but also for humans, you know, you need salt. You need it, you know, or you need iodine in you, right? So you need iodine, you need salt. So they have to keep it there, but they have to keep it like locked up, you know, in the secure pantry, because if the salt gets out, it can be used to like destroy the zombies and everything they've worked for, right? So yeah, that wouldn't be good. But yeah, so that's Thriller Bark, still floating around somewhere in paradise, probably never going to be referenced again, although who knows, if we ever see those giant things again, maybe if Oda goes back to explain what those things are, we also see Thriller Bark just kind of floating in the distance like a rubber ducky in a tub, but the focus is on those giant things now. Okay, so yeah, we'll see about that. And I also made a video about the giant things if you want to know more about that stuff, or the little that we do know. Okay, so threw that up there. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Spooky month.